Welcome to the Cincy Postcast, episode 137. I am your host, Kevin Wallace, and we have a fantastic episode lined up for you today. We were joined by the Cincinnati Enquirer's Pat Brennan for this one, the Aaron Boupendza saga that has unfolded over the last week and continues into the early preseason for FC Cincinnati is heartbreaking, fascinating, bizarre, too many adjectives to be used here. And Pat is on top of this story. He was so helpful to have on so we could kind of figure out what the heck is actually going on with this situation. We also talk about other, do we call them distractions? There's other things off the field these days with FC Cincinnati. How will this impact the season ahead? We dive into all of it. And then in part 2, it's a real quick in the 11 out of the 18. You throw that all together, you got yourselves a postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, I've got two gentlemen. One, a regular, but not a mainstay, unfortunately. I'm joined, of course, by the Chief, but we are joined by the Cincinnati Enquirer's Pat Brennan tonight. Pat, how you doing, man?
I'm great. I'm fantastic, and I take so much pride in being the post-Cincy's unpaid intern, essentially. It's great to be back.
It's a testament to how much I enjoy your company, Pat, that I'm going to let it slide. You're wearing that awful hat right now.
Yeah, I know.
ahead of our big playoff matchup, or as I'm terming it, the Philadelphia Eagles get right Monday night tomorrow night.
Oh, I don't think there's going to be anything right about tomorrow night for the Eagles, but yeah, thankfully there's not a visual component to the offering you guys make to the public, and
thanks for all of our sake.
I am wearing a Philadelphia Eagles beanie right now, so only because it's like the last day I'll be able to wear it with a modicum of pride publicly, and the collapse will come full circle tomorrow, and I have every confidence they'll find a way to lose. So
it is a win-win for me because either the Buccaneers win this game, or I have to sit here and know that you're cheering over the fact that you beat Baker Mayfield, which really shouldn't bring anyone any sort of joy.
No. I mean, yeah, that's the other thing about tomorrow. If you win, if you're the Eagles, it's like the bar for success and achievement tomorrow is so remarkably low. So
it's either what you were supposed to do, or it's a terrible loss that you took. There's no
right, and they weren't supposed to be in this position to begin with, 5 weeks ago. So.
Right.
But here they are.
Stumbled to the end. It's fine. You got into the playoffs, something most Bengals fans listening to this can't say. So
I know.
I'd rather be there than not. So
they were all big mad that the graphic got posted on ESPN that the Buccaneers made the playoffs at 9-8, division winners hosting a game. Bengals, same record, watching at home.
Yeah.
Just tough scenes in the AFC North this year.
It really is.
The Bengals had, I think, like one of the toughest schedules in the last 10 years that like any NFL team ended up having to face because of the division being so strong this year.
Yeah.
Cool. Feels good. And we did it without Burrow.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll look past the Kelly Green coming through the screen here. But no, Pat, I was reminded of Vladimir Lenin this week. He has an all-timer quote. There are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. In an FC Cincinnati world, this past week was one of those where a decade happened.
Yeah.
We have any number of topics to choose from to start with. However, I know I am curious. I know you wrote a story about this, a bizarre situation involving FC Cincinnati star striker Aaron Boupendza. It's hard to really say much about this situation. So much of it is still up in the air. And I'll be honest with you, especially trying to follow it from the Gabon perspective, I don't speak French. There's a lot of TikToks out there like talking celebrity gossip and Gabon. I got nothing with it. So I'm gonna do my best to like outline this, but then by all means correct me if something is not confirmed or something. But as far as we can tell, Aaron Boupendza, as I said, striker for FC Cincinnati, had his cell phone stolen back in November of 2023, probably around the time he was supposed to be there for the national team camp. He had his phone stolen. He had, let's say, self-produced a sex tape for himself and a unknown woman in the video as well. That video is now being threatened to be released by presumably the same folks that stole his phone. The threat there being one, outside of the, I think, obvious embarrassment of that happening, is two, Gabon has a fairly strict, fairly draconian anti-pornography law that could very easily fall under, where Boupendza could be facing 5 years in prison or a multi-$1,000 fine for having done so. I think that pretty much covers us. But Pat, fill it in.
Well,
where else?
We can probably, it's probably fair to acknowledge, certain clips have been brought to my attention by mostly people in the FC Cincinnati sphere. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet. There's a ton of rumors, for the purpose of my story. I was trying not to get into the TMZ realm where, I don't, and frankly, I think when you're talking about the kind of situation that Aaron is in, potential blackmail situation, who exactly is on the other side of it. It's a bad actor. Okay. So what the beef is, what it stems from, of a little bit less interest to me as of this moment. Okay. Right. This could all change, but, so I just want to acknowledge some of what a lot of us are seeing out there. I see those things too. But yeah, it's a shocking, scary situation that Aaron has been in. I think a lot of people are relieved to know that not only is he in Cincinnati, and not only did he report on time back to FC Cincinnati, but he was a participant in the club's internal media day today. I would imagine that he was, I think like most of us would be in any kind of a like situation, probably had his attentions in a number of different areas, probably a little bit distracted, I would think. I don't know that to a certainty because I wasn't there. This was an internal thing that FC Cincinnati was doing to get ready for this year. But, I think at a very basic level, the fact that this was all happening in a country that a lot of people in Cincinnati don't know a lot about. I think there were very scary basic questions out there in the ether that were as simple questions, but dire. Like, is Aaron safe? Is he okay? Is he going to come back?
Can he even get back on his work visa?
Yeah, right. So I think there's a lot of relief. I think there was generally some confidence that he would report back on time, and obviously he did. And Kevin, you summarized it pretty well. I don't want to, I don't want to belabor any of those points, but you summarized it well. Aaron's back. Now I think it's fair to be concerned about, how the guy's doing. I haven't seen it. Soccer feels secondary in all of this, but I think, I haven't seen a single projection of FC Cincinnati for this coming year where Aaron isn't a key contributor. I mean, obviously he's a designated player. Right. He's going to be a key contributor.
Right.
So, in a practical, if you're going to talk about the soccer piece of it in a practical, common sense way, this is a really troubling thing for the person. And I think there are legitimate questions about how that translates to the soccer side. And but you have to worry about the person first. This, I said to you guys before we came on, the facts of the situation shock the conscience. It's harrowing, and I think people are just glad as of 9 p.m. on Sunday night here that he's in Cincinnati, and frankly that he's safe. So
it's an interesting thing when you see these sort of stories take a life cycle on the internet, and the first bit of information that comes out about this is Aaron Boupendza produces a sex tape in a country that has strict anti-pornography laws. And then it's like, okay, the first thing that we all want to do is we all want to make a joke about this. And there are any number of low-hanging fruit jokes. And as a specialist in low-hanging fruit jokes, just because the fruit is low doesn't mean it's not delicious. That's just like anyone that's picked an apple or picked an orange can tell you this. But then, as is so often the case, and I don't learn this lesson because I choose not to learn lessons online. I choose to keep stepping on the rake over and over again. The story gets worse. Yeah. And all of a sudden it turns into, okay, this isn't funny. This is a young man who engaged in what we can all look and we all know at this point was a consensual act and is being blackmailed by individuals. And then all of a sudden when that happens, the story takes on a dark turn. And it is a reminder, and an uncomfortable reminder, that in this sport, we get players that are global. And they come from all different countries all around the world that have any number of laws that we in this country can't even contemplate living under.
Right.
And you start asking really weird questions and you find yourself Googling things like, what is the U.S. policy on asylum for individuals that are being persecuted due to blackmail? Or what is the extradition status of countries like Canada and Jamaica? Because the last thing that they would want is, I know that the United States doesn't have an extradition policy with Gabon, but that if he steps off the plane in Jamaica, does he all of a sudden lose protections by being in the United States, meaning that he can't make the trip for the CONCACAF Champions Cup, or that he can't go play an away day in Montreal or Toronto? And this is all just to say, every lawyer at FC Cincinnati, at KMK, they earn their money on stuff like this. And I just can't imagine going through this if you're Aaron Boupendza. There are so many different ways in this story, from his visa status, to extradition status, to his own personal liberty, that are at stake here on something where, as best we can tell, it doesn't seem like he had any fault in, beyond doing what I would say a large number of people his age have done, and that's keep a record of a good night out.
I mean, I would just add, like, maybe some things I should have added to what Kevin said, but just that, there is a strongly held belief that Aaron was the victim in all of this. And I think there were a couple reports that came out prior to my own, and all of those seem to put the onus of the tape, this sex tape, the onus of its existence, and the more so the fact that it might leak, on Aaron. Things were written in a way that said things like, Aaron is risking, as if to suggest by doing it. Well, he didn't do that. All he did was, like the chief said, he made this recording of a consensual act. It's not really not uncommon in 2024. And I don't even frankly, I don't begrudge him that. Even people are entitled to their sexual proclivities in, the privacy of their own homes. Really. I mean, I don't care that the guy made a video. I really don't. And I think the sad part is that someone is holding it over him and has triggered what I think you would unquestionably have to say is a life-altering event for the reasons the Chief just mentioned, the potential implications to his work life, but just having to live out this trauma publicly. And the fact that this is being aired out, it's a life-altering event. And, I think there are some more immediate things on the soccer side that maybe feel to me like maybe a little bit more appropriate at this moment to consider. Like, he contended, even though he was dismissed from the Gabon national team camp in November, at his exit interview in December, he contended that things were going to get smoothed over, or that they had been smoothed over. And, he and the manager of the national team were on good terms, things like this. He was optimistic about his future with his national team. And now, I think if it's a question of whether or not he can legally set foot in that country anymore, and I don't know that it is, but if that's on the table, I would imagine it's crossed his mind. We're talking about probably, potentially at some point this week, I would imagine he was considering the potential sudden and sad end to his national team career, So there are aspects of this on the soccer side that are probably a little more pertinent. He's going to have time with FC Cincinnati. He's going to be surrounded by FC Cincinnati over the next 5-6 weeks during preseason. He'll be in a safe environment. He will be in an organization with people who have experience. If you think hard about this, I don't want to name names, but there are people who are well known in the organization to have lived out traumas publicly, who can help, who can put their arm around Aaron and be like, hey, look, this is the way. This is how we'll get through this. This is how I got through this. And that's all going to be really good for him. But there are some pieces on the soccer side of this that are very urgent and probably had to be addressed in the immediate term. So just like it's a lot to, even though I wrote a story about it that I'm pretty confident was coherent and, followed the right formula that I like to follow when I'm writing things. It's hard to sit here and just piece it all together verbally here with you guys. There's so much to it. It's so nuanced. We've never seen anything like it, and it's very, very disturbing. So
to sort of ask the questions though. So as an FC Cincinnati fan, as this story is it's still evolving to a certain extent, and we don't know all of the details on this. What are the details that we're missing right now that could be, that you're watching out for, you're thinking could be things that would be, okay, pay attention to if we find this out? That could be something that changes the situation we're in right now for him.
Well, eventually, and I wouldn't just as a general rule, I wouldn't expect anyone in his shoes to be, have their full attention on the season to come. So, I mean, I don't know too much about, how this is going to play out legally, or, if he was or did or is going to engage in a payment to prevent the release of, I don't know. I think what I can look out for right now and try to keep my finger on the pulse of is, is he okay mentally? And, at what point is it fair to expect him to be a fully functional contributing player for FC Cincinnati? I don't think we can reasonably expect him to be fully engaged. Look, the guy's a professional, right? Like he even during the playoffs, when he was going through the national team situation, he wasn't playing badly,
Right.
Now, this is a very different situation to that. I don't mean to compare the two at all, but he's a pro. He's handled adversity. This is obviously, like I said, a potentially life-altering event. I'm just going to be looking to see that this guy is in good spirits and that eventually he's turning a corner and can be a productive player for FC Cincinnati, because at some point, we will have to worry about the team's, wins and losses, and who's scoring goals, where are goals not coming from, things like that. So, when is it safe and appropriate to start looking at Aaron again in those terms? Because I don't think we're there. I don't think it's fair to go there yet. And
my thought was that maybe to be a good teammate that Nick Hagelin could just release a sex tape of his own just to take some heat off Aaron a little bit. As a real Cincinnatian, that we look out for people in this town. So here, I'm going to leak something that happened to me. And Mrs. Hagelin.
It's not, solidarity is.
Look, the tape that I think we all were wishing for is the Matt Miazga Red Bull Arena hallway footage. And look, if we're leaking tapes online, could somebody just make that available to us? That'd be really great, because that would. I
don't think we've heard the last of that.
Yeah.
So on that note, with this sort of moving this to a higher level, it's been a newsy couple of months for FC Cincinnati. What is your take on, just in the club, the vibe going on currently of, is it time to calm down a little in terms of the way that, or are you, as a media guy, is it just like, yeah, this is great, I've got stuff to write about? You would rather not have, with the obvious caveat that you never want someone to be a victim of blackmail. That's horrible and whatnot. But that there is sort of, okay, you talked about his Boupendza's situation with Gabon, where that happened. We have Miazga in the ref's locker room. We've got this now. At what point, or is this an overblown worry that there's just a lot of distractions swirling around this club?
Yeah, no, I think that is legit. And again, Aaron didn't ask for this situation. It is being forced upon him by a bad actor, like I said. But I think it's fair to say that it's a lot of noise between those stories you mentioned from the postseason run and now this. And I think you've got to give Aaron time and space here to recover from this situation. And I think in terms of what I just termed as noise, I think there's probably still a hangover from some of the things that were happening during the playoff run. Mm-hmm. This one of FC Cincinnati's strengths throughout most of 2023, in my mind, was that it was such a cohesive, together group. I mean, almost to a lame kind of kumbaya kind of.
Yeah,
that's what the vibe felt like, and they rode that to incredible heights last year. And then I think, I wonder how much of it was the kind of the negative media attention around the Matt Miazga situation versus, what just subtracting him from the field, like physically taking him away from Pat Noonan being able to select him. Was that the greatest manifestation of kind of how that impacted the team? Just him physically not being there. And maybe was the media stuff maybe not such a concern for the team. I don't know. But you cannot deny that the playoffs were it was I thought the choppiest we'd seen them all season, probably. It was one of the most uncertain periods in terms of what I thought I was going to see from the team on a game in, game out basis after that Red Bulls match and coming out of that international break. And yeah, it was very noisy. And I think that was part of what made, the postseason exit so. I think some people were crestfallen, some people were frustrated because they knew the team was capable of more. And maybe if some of those stories, if the Matt Miazga story doesn't get as big as it does, and if he's not suspended for 3 games, or I guess it's 4 ultimately, after 1 for the red and then 3 games. I mean, it was a lot, I think that's real. And hopefully we never saw this team under Pat Noonan really go through a period like that. And now there's been, some semblance. I don't think it was a great restorative offseason for everyone, especially the guys that logged the most minutes last year and in the playoffs. But, we've had some semblance of an offseason here. Was that enough to restore everyone physically, mentally, and to get them past any lingering, I wouldn't be shocked to hear down the line that there was a closed door meeting. And I don't know that this has happened. Obviously, everyone just got in to Cincinnati, but is there a time during the early preseason here where there's just like an airing of the grievances, where everyone says anyone who has anything they feel they need to say or speak on from that playoff run, that, because within days, those guys were out the door and on their own in their offseason. Right. They had to be, because it was going to be such a short offseason. But yeah, I think there would be some merit there to going back and revisiting some of these issues and just clearing the air, because I think that stuff was just, it was thick in the air during the postseason. I don't think anyone, I don't know if there was time along the way in the heat of the moment to address it all. So yeah, I think, and with a short off season like they just had, I wouldn't be surprised if some of that is, a lot of things might be still lingering physically, mentally, and with respect to some of the concerns coming out of some of the noise that we witnessed and all kind of experienced in a way last postseason.
Yeah, because this doesn't feel normal for an MLS club. This feels normal for an NBA. Normal might be a strong word, but this feels like something that you would expect from a very high level EPL, Serie A team, or an NBA team, or an NFL team. I mean, maybe I'm in a bubble where I don't follow the other cities closely enough, but I don't see a lot of other teams with this much big off-field news happening on a fairly regular basis. Most of these teams in MLS, the players are fairly anonymous, doing anonymous things, and you just don't hear stories like this.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I wonder if that's the trade-off for, having a global recruitment strategy. You're going to get different people from different cultures, and I don't know. I agree with what you just said. It's
no, I think
a lot. There was just no. I think there was no noise for the vast majority of FC Cincinnati's best ever season, and it became, over the course of it, the best ever season the team has had. And then when things got a little bit salacious off the field, then it got rocky. And I mean, you can't. I mean, these guys are only human, right? So, but I think that's an important reminder for these guys that, for a while it seemed like it's not that they could show up and just get results, but I think maybe it's more about a gut check that, if behaviors deviate from a certain norm that they're trying to uphold internally, this is what can happen. You can blow a 2-goal lead in the Eastern Conference semifinals just from the accumulated stuff. Let's try to get it back on track here. I think that's all very legitimate.
Yeah, I think a part of that noise as well, although certainly a different variety of it, is the transfer sagas that this club has ongoing. Previously, it was Brandon Vasquez, right? So, again, similar story to Miles Robinson, actually. Stated publicly he'd like to go to Europe. Allegedly, there were some offers out there, although I don't know how real they were or how much money they paid.
I want to put that.
Yeah, please.
Kevin, why don't you finish your thought?
My only thought was he ends up going to Monterrey, and we're probably we're at the start of a probable similar saga with Barreal. So I think you have interesting in that it's two players that I don't remember if Barreal was an all-star, but two guys that absolutely should be all-stars. Some of the best players in their position in the league are jostling to get out of here. And I think most fans understand where they are in their career, but that changes the vibe in a locker room.
Yeah.
So,
and I want to include this in the noise too, the fallout. And I'm just surprised there was. I was caught off guard, and maybe it's a symptom of having never had a true regular kind of modern mainstay in the U.S. men's national team setup at FC Cincinnati before. And just, it's been a different conversation with Matt Miazga relative to the national team and, Brandon Vasquez trying to break in. But that was a noisy acquisition. I mean, there was the public piece of it, which was FC Cincinnati advertising to all of downtown Clifton, Mount Adams, over the Rhine. I mean, that it was happening on the side of the stadium. And then he signs. FC Cincinnati fans, I think, were in a really uncomfortable spot with that, in all honesty, because they're celebrating the fact that, like, their beloved GM has just swooped in and claimed, maybe I saw Matt Doyle say that, Miles might have been the best free agent in MLS history.
Yeah.
Best free agent signing in MLS history. But then, FC Cincinnati fans are made to feel crappy about it because FC Cincinnati, everyone else is saying FC Cincinnati isn't good enough for Miles, and
holding him back.
They're saying MLS isn't good enough, but by extension, also FC Cincinnati is not good enough. So that was really noisy to me. And I thought that was an unfortunate one for the club because they deserved to take a victory lap on that signing because Miles is a great player. It was a great signing, and I think he'll be fantastic for the club. And FC Cincinnati fans deserve to bask in that too. But immediately, it was just this incredibly negative thing, and Jesse Marsh is, talking badly about the damn thing, and all this roundly wonderful moment in the club's offseason is suddenly, a controversy as well. So that was another strange one for me, and I want to include that in the noisy bits here. I interrupted you guys.
What's funny about that too is that it's this awful part of Twitter where it's person with USMNT, an American flag, and some other word as his Twitter bio name.
Yeah.
He's paid Elon for the blue check mark, and he's always big mad about the fact that a men's national team player is not doing exactly what he thinks, and it's always some dude in his mom's basement, what he thinks these players should be doing to better their career. And how dare Miles Robinson not go over to some third-tier Dutch league or some second-tier Bundesliga 2, because that's where he needs to train in the crucible of the place where soccer means more, and never a thought being given about, hey, what's the contract terms he's being offered over there?
Yeah.
Is he going to make the same money? Would you take USMNT, American flag truth, blue check mark? Would you take a third of the money you're making currently because you've got to challenge yourself at a different Dunkin' Donuts to manage? Like, is that like is that how you see your career going?
Yeah.
And so it's just, it's incredibly frustrating that for players like that, and we saw a little bit of it with Brandon Vasquez too, and his transfer out to Monterrey.
I was just going to go there.
That these players, everyone has this dream of what Americans should be doing. And, or not everyone, but this segment of Twitter has this dream about what Americans should be doing. And it's like they need the validation of the soccer world that Americans are advancing upward. And that when that doesn't happen all of a sudden, to them, it's a personal affront to their soccer fandom. Where Vasquez doubles his salary, I think more than doubles his salary going down to Monterrey. He gets to play for one of the biggest clubs on this side of the Atlantic Ocean. There's not a lot of bigger clubs than Monterrey, and yet somehow that's thought to be bad.
And in an MLS culture where we love when these guys, quote unquote, graduate on to something bigger and better. And then, a large chunk, some amount of fans from the MLS club's fan base then become supporters of that foreign club that the player just joined. It's like celebrating a high school or a college graduation for a friend or family member. And I think there again, FC Cincinnati fans were stripped of that because everyone was, crowing about how, this was a lateral move for Brandon Vasquez and, why isn't he going to Europe? Why isn't he challenging? So, all this nonsense, this absolute nonsense. And by the way, Monterrey is not a lateral move.
Right.
It's since when? When is it a lateral move?
Thanks for the promotion, guys.
What are we basing that off of? Is it Leagues Cup?
Wait, I thought MLS sucked. If MLS sucks, Monterrey isn't a lateral move. What the?
Right. Are we basing that off of Leagues Cup, where MLS went 1-2-3 in a tournament that 5 months ago nobody cared about? So now
it was all played on American soil.
Yeah. Liga MX is still the superior league. That is a hallucination to me that Monterrey is somehow a lesser move. I mean, this is a bigger club. FC Cincinnati's great. Look, FC Cincinnati's fantastic. But Monterrey is a bigger club with more history. It's just by simply existing for a longer period of time. But also, they've won 5 Champions Cups / leagues. And, this is, I think, in a lot of ways, a more viable path for Brandon to compete against European powerhouses via the FIFA Club World Cup. So, and it just happens to be like a beautiful city, by the way, in Mexico that he's moving to. So, just God, so much crap,
so much trauma, man.
I'm sick of it. I'm honest. It's so obnoxious, Brandon's story is a complete success story for me. It's been well documented. He came over here via Gerard Nijkamp during the Nashville SC expansion draft trade for less than $200,000 TAM. And they flipped that into up to $8.5 million of real money. Like FC Cincinnati.
That's 1/3 the price of Mercy Health Training Center.
Yeah. I mean, FC Cincinnati did right by Brandon the entire time. Brandon did right by them. Didn't try to force his way out of here to Europe, even though he probably, I'm sure part of him wanted to, but at the first sight of success, didn't try to force his way out. He was given a raise and well compensated in the meantime. And now, like you said, he's gotten another big raise and he's playing for one of the biggest teams on this continent, probably arguably the biggest. So I don't see any other way to look at that other than good vibes all around and a complete success story. And I think the Brandon thing was also a good reminder of like this idea that develops in people's heads. Sometimes it's completely unfounded of, what European caliber talent looks like. Because we see guys of varying levels and skill levels end up over there. Some are, some people thought Brandon, who was a more heralded MLS player the last couple of years, they thought, oh, he's European material for sure, has to end up there. And sometimes you see lesser heralded players like Sam Vines end up in Europe, but he's over there doing a job, really giving a good account of himself from everything I understand. And then you have another case like Alvaro Barrial, who everyone said, oh, slam dunk, going to Europe. He may end up there. I imagine he will. But here we are in mid-January. I guarantee you most of the people that thought he was a slam dunk for Europe thought it would be done by now. And he's still an FC Cincinnati player today. So, this idea of what it takes to get to Europe, I don't think anyone has a good idea of what that actually looks like and what that entails.
But also, Europe isn't a thing. Right. Europe is a collection of hundreds of clubs that each have their own way of doing business, that each value players differently, that have different budgets and different needs. And it's not like, oh, congratulations, you are now qualified for Europe and some club will definitely take you. Right. No, your skill set and your valuation and your salary demands have to align with one of the clubs in Europe. And that also has to factor in competition level and whatnot.
Yeah.
And for Vasquez, it's okay. My skill set gets me a ton of money, millions of dollars in Mexico. Why would I turn that down to make way less money on way less of a transfer fee for my club?
In what is a superior league to MLS.
Right. And to a lot of leagues in Europe. League MX is better than a lot of European leagues.
Absolutely. He is climbing. His trajectory is undecidedly still, or undoubtedly, I should say, still upward, like still moving in the right direction. So
with Barreal specifically, he wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to move on to Europe. I think that the rumor mill, or if you believe it online, that the club has placed a valuation of him somewhere in the neighborhood between $6 and $8 million is what it sounds like, and what I've seen bandied about. To a certain extent, when you have a player like Barreal or like Vasquez, where they want to go, and they've made no secret that they want to go.
Yeah.
If you can't get your $6 million valuation for Barreal, at what point do you as a club say, I would rather get 4 and versus having an asset on the books that may not be fully bought into what we're doing because they don't want to be here?
It's such a good question. And kind of going off that, I think it was just a fan, so not from any kind of official channel, but I saw someone suggest, it might have been in response to earlier this week, I tweeted like FC Cincinnati still hadn't received any formal bids. That was as of Wednesday, between Wednesday and Friday. I don't remember. Someone said, the more I read about this, the more I feel like he could be here until the summer. And I'm not there yet, but it could conceivably happen. I think it's Alvaro's situation is different in some important ways from Brandon's. I think, Alvaro was always brought here as someone who was a prospect, not only for FC Cincinnati, but I remember Gerard Nijkamp, the Zoom in 2020, talking about how this is a player to invest in and basically reap the rewards of down the line. And now we're kind of at that point. And it hasn't always been smooth for Alvaro. Mm-hmm. I think there were times, and he only got a handful of games in 2020, but 2021, I think there were long stretches where he showed flashes, but wasn't like a super impactful player. And, I think for him to see Gerard go, the person that brought him in, and Gerard brought Brandon in too, but Brandon's circumstances were different. No one was, you wanted Brandon to develop, but no one was projecting he was going to get to the point where Monterrey was going to pay $8.5 million for him, right? So
right.
I think Alvaro probably thought maybe like at some point, oh, whoa, like this is not what I signed on for. Complete regime change, overhaul in the club,
overhaul the formation,
position change not long after that, and maybe that more than anything else. So he has really he's gone with the punches, and I think there's something to be said for that. I think you need to reward that to a degree. But I will go back to something Chris Albright said in an unrelated conversation, but the comment he made is applicable here. And I think it was actually on the subject of Brandon wanting to transfer, or potentially transferring out. This was maybe 10 months ago. And he said, like, basically, Chris Albright said, my job is to make FC Cincinnati better. I'm not here to make these other clubs better. A team I could see potentially getting a discount on a transfer fee for Alvaro just because FC Cincinnati wants to do him a solid, potentially. I'm saying this is all hypothetical. If you wanted to give him an extra kind of added bonus for rolling with the punches and kind of doing his bit for the club and being a team guy over the years. But you're not going to leave like, God, I don't know, $500,000, $1 million on the table just because you love Alvaro, like it's a business. It's a business. So I think if someone's going to fall well short of the valuation, then, the team has to stick to its guns, and Alvaro's got to be a professional. He knows he's close. He has to know he's close. And if the moment isn't right for some of the big teams that have been rumored to be interested, there will come a time, maybe there are even better options in August in the secondary transfer window. You know what I mean? But I think you have to get the appropriate value. When is someone else going to do you? When is any other club in the world going to do FC Cincinnati a favor, on a transfer fee? Never. The answer is never. So
someone overseas with just a craving for Skyline, and they're like, okay, we'll sell you at a discount to Cincinnati because you absolutely want to go there.
So Lens or whoever it is, you're not going to get a bargain bin price for this. Is a premium player. He's an excellent, excellent player. I think he does need to move on now, but now can extend into the summer. Absolutely. So look, he's under contract. He signed an extension last year. So he's an FC Cincinnati player until a transfer goes through. And I trust and hope that everyone is being professional about that, about the realities of the situation. And I'm sure they are.
Yeah, it really reminds me of the Brenner saga last year. It's about the one piece of drama that could have been there hovering over the club. But as you said, I think there was a little bit of a falling out during the preseason tour. I seem to think there was a team dinner that didn't go great with Brenner and Albright. But after that, Brenner was virtually entirely removed from the team, whether he was truly hurt or not. I'm open to discussion or more information, but he basically only played like 2 games before the team was finally able to move him in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, he scored 1 goal last year.
Right.
They didn't suffer too much for that. Now, I think they could have. It's scary to think what they actually could have been with him if he were like on the bus and like really into it. Isn't that kind of fun to think about? Or painful, depending on how you
It's just more proof of like how well coached and how well run this team was last year, that they got virtually nothing out of that DP striker position until Boupendza really integrated post Leagues Cup. That was just a dead spot on their roster.
Yeah.
And they played this majority of the season with one of the biggest asset pieces in an MLS roster just not contributing.
It's incredible. I hope I didn't cut one of you guys off, but
I'm curious.
No, look, that was a case where, they were not going to equivocate. I think there was the bit from Albright where I forget which channel this aired on, if it was linear TV or if this was an interview they posted. Tommy G did the interview, and they either did it on linear TV on like CPO or it was on the team website. And like Albright said, they were chasing a ghost in terms of getting all the money back on the transfer fee that they paid to Sao Paulo. I think chasing a ghost might have been a direct, like verbatim what he said. So they like backed off of a number, but they didn't back off from their updated valuation. I think if one of you guys was kind of trying to get at Brenner's value in the marketplace, like they definitely held on and waited till they could put something together for a reasonable price. And no, it wasn't. It was a club record. I don't think it was celebrated quite as one, because if you do the simple math,
they lost money.
Ultimately, they took a loss on it. Yeah. But, what was it? 10 million, even 9.5. I don't remember.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, huge amount of money. So, yes.
So let me look at this in a different way with the Barreal transfer. To what extent do you think that the offseason, the roster build that they're going through is being held back by the fact that they will get resources for selling Barreal if they hit their valuation, or even if they hit less than their valuation?
Yeah.
And so on a team where they're carrying so many players that are at max salary budget charge, already. Getting that extra, $1.1 million in GAM can really make a difference in terms of how the roster is distributed this year, to say nothing of the salary slot he's operating on with his new contract that he signed. To a certain extent, are they sort of in limbo right now with their roster build, wondering if Barreal is going to be here or not?
Well, that's a good question. I think, I mean, if you look at what they've been doing, they have been, they've been in a pattern of recruitment that certainly suggests that one, Barreal is leaving, and two, they're getting ready for that.
Yeah.
So like the Diego Palacios situation obviously didn't work out. He moved on to where in Brazil?
Corinthians, I believe.
Yes.
Corinthians.
Thank you. That's right.
That's a good call, though. You wouldn't be trying to pull in Palacios.
And that was early. That was early. Right? So like that was like mid-December, maybe coming up on Christmas, but whatever.
Another player who saw his name in lights to all the denizens of Over the Rhine and adjacent areas.
Yeah. Very bold strategy, by the way. I love it. I told people, this is great.
Yeah, gone are the days of sneaking people in on a private jet somewhere.
Yeah. But
don't have to be too the flight aware.
You're that confident in your recruitment that you're just going to put it in, 70-foot scrolling letters across the side of your stadium for how many tens of thousands of people to see. I thought it was great.
We need a live webcam from the pitch, at the stadium, just see if anything pops up.
Yeah, you never know, really. But yeah, so I don't know if it's being held back, Chief. By the same token, I've thought for a while now, like it won't surprise me, and I think we might see this with that. Corey Baird is in the door. There's been a lot of debate among FC Cincinnati fans that I've observed about what is that role? Is that the like-for-like replacement for Vasquez? I do think there will be a larger money striker signing eventually. But I could see all of these things, preferably not at left back because you're really not as deep there. But I could see some of these recruitments stretching into not just that super expansive MLS primary transfer window that's like 4 months long, but I wouldn't be shocked if some of this stuff took till summer to get done. And that, I don't want to deviate too much from your question, but all of that has kind of led me to think this could be a situation where, at least in the regular season, I think there's a good solid floor about how low FC Cincinnati can go. And that won't be very low, but in some, like over the balance of 2024, this might be a case where, because you are rebuilding a little bit from last year's team, especially if and when Alvaro moves on. So, I think this might be a situation where for most of 24, you're taking a couple steps back in order to eventually move forward in the aggregate and maybe get everyone locked in for the playoff run, kind of like they did in 2022. You brought Matt Miazga in during that summer window, and that was kind of like one of the final-ish pieces they needed. They felt like that that was one of the things they were able, that was like the last piece they were able to turn over from the old kind of roster. And then, they went on a nice little playoff run. I wonder if they're just trying to align everything in time for the playoff run this coming season.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe is the big picture plan, no one would ever cop to this, but is the big picture plan to just brace for impact a little bit this year? You're going to take a few steps back. I think their floor is a 4 seed, maybe a 5, but probably 4 seed, worst case scenario. Tell me if you think that's crazy. But then you're going to charge at it really hard again in 2025. And I know that it's kind of a crappy thing to think about as we're getting ready for 2024, but there is a lot of stuff happening right now. And so getting back to your question, Chief, I think there's evidence to suggest that they have been trying to put the pieces they've been angling to get a replacement for Alvaro ready in time for the start of the year. And maybe that's the clearest evidence we have that something is going to come to fruition in the next however many days and weeks. But I wouldn't be totally shocked if, whether it's Barrial or, another striker, whatever, something totally off the board maybe. If some of this stuff stretched into April, like Obi did in 22, and maybe August, like Miazga did in 22.
Well, The interesting thing, and tell me if you think I'm wrong on this, because this is sort of a thing I've been working on, a pet theory for how this is going right here.
Yeah.
Is that if the goal is to win MLS Cup, it turns out all you really need to be is a team that's in ascendancy in October, November, and December.
Yeah.
We saw that with Columbus,
Absolutely.
where they
100%.
were not a complete product for the majority of the year.
Yeah.
They finished around, I think, the fourth seed, maybe?
4, yeah. I think.
Yeah, they finished around the fourth seed, but the team is coming together and getting hot. They bring in Diego Rossi in the summer window. They lose Zelarayan, but Cucho starts to heat up. Rossi is brought in and integrated. They bring a couple more pieces in, and all of a sudden, this great season you've put together where you've been the best team on balance, like FC Cincinnati was, doesn't mean quite as much because another team's just playing better and has gotten their stuff together at the right time. And it's interesting you bring Miazga up, because the other thing I've been thinking about is that this year is the first year, or one of the first years, where FC Cincinnati doesn't have a spot where you can pay a transfer fee realistically to bring somebody in. They're out of U22 spots. Their DP spots are all filled. And the Miazga comp is interesting because they waited Chelsea out until the point where they didn't have to pay Miazga. He came on a free. And what I think lends a lot of credibility to the idea they're going to wait till the summer window to do business is that they're going to wait for some guys to get out of contract in Europe and bring some guys over on a free. I would love this. I'm just putting his name out because he fits his profile, but it's somebody like an Olivier Giroud, where he's going to be out of contract at the end of this year, and you could get him on a free to play striker. Not him specifically, although that would be awesome. He's dreamy, handsome, and has a Chelsea pedigree and is a target striker. But like without the ability to pay a transfer fee, you're not going to be able to do great business in the winter window because most of the people you're looking at are in the middle of contracts with other teams right now.
And you know what, frankly, I like that Pat Noonan. I like the idea of the Supporters' Shield being the more important trophy. But I don't. It's like they've won it, and at the end of the day, it's not. Chief, I think you tweeted something to this effect. It's not the trophy that gets a star put over your crest. You've won it. It's not the thing you need to win back-to-back. If you can do that, great. But MLS Cup is kind of the piece that they're really chasing right now. So to your point, they really don't need to blow the doors off this league in April, May, June, July like they did last year. Just put yourself in a good position, a viable position for a playoff run, a top 4 seed, where you'll get at least one, I think at least 1 or 2 rounds of home playoff game, whatever.
We'll see what they do this year. They change the fucking format every year. So
who knows?
We
don't know what the playoff format. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Joke, absolute joke. But they did it in 22. They bring in Miazga, great player. Still needed some time to onboard, and probably I think he would tell you wasn't as in sync with everyone as he was come 2023. So like the onboarding process takes time. But yeah, you just have to have this team ready and firing in time for the playoffs. It doesn't need to happen a moment before then, like you just said, with the crew, and kind of like with FC Cincinnati in 22, not exactly boat racing anyone, but finished the regular season well the last couple weeks, and then had a very convincing playoff run, albeit with the loss to Philly. So, in some ways, I think that look, there's no reason to doubt Chris Auld right now. Whatever he does, you're going to give the guy the benefit of the doubt. Everyone does, and everyone should, unless and until we have a reason to doubt him, which we don't. But yeah, I don't think this team, they've already won the Supporters Shield. It was great. They benefited from that greatly. They'll play in Champions Cup this year. That's a great reward for what they achieved last year. But I think there's a been there, done that kind of vibe around the Supporters Shield, even though I'm the biggest champion of the fact that the supporters run and control that. I'm not poo-pooing
right
the idea of the Shield, right? But for the team in terms of their trophy case and what they want to set as the legitimate target, the legitimate aim to achieve this year, I think it's probably MLS Cup. And you don't have to have this team, your best 11 set in stone on February 25th in order to achieve that, clearly.
Yeah. Pat, well, on that note, I will say we ran through predictions when the schedule launched. We went ahead and predicted the entire season, and we had the same mentality that the team wouldn't try for a Shield, that this is going to be a cup tournament team, whether that's Leagues Cup or if they're in the Open Cup. I think that's still an open question. Champions Cup and then obviously MLS Cup. However, after we went through all of it, I tallied up the points. We came up with a 68-point season, which is 1 point back from 2023.
Wild optimism. You can't be optimistic in the offseason. When can you be optimistic?
I mean, that's incredible.
Before a single new signing was made for any team, we made these predictions. So.
Yeah, I mean, 60.
You'd take it if offered.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, that's the other thing. Like, they lost Brandon, but they bring Miles in. So before they signed Miles, and before I learned about some, I thought Diego Palacios was a good kind of reach target to get, if only because I think Palacios' camp always thought he was going to go abroad.
Palacios may have had a different opinion than his camp, though, from what I've heard. But we'll find out later on.
Yeah, I'm sure. we always find out. I want to say, I've already made the case for how and why FC Cincinnati could take a step back in the standings this year, but you got Miles Robinson now. Corey Baird projects as almost a like for like numbers wise, almost a like for like comp to Brandon Vasquez of last season, which over the balance of the year, not too bad, even if it obviously was not as good as in the league as he was the year prior. But, you get another striker in the door, all of a sudden, I think Corey Baird becomes probably the best striker sitting on the bench in all of MLS. I mean, that would be outrageous, a player like Corey Baird. I don't know what kind of money he's on or what they told him about what the plan is for him. But, you could conceivably see him being a bench option for FC Cincinnati in some scenarios. So it's I want to say they take a step back, at least for some part of the season, but then Robinson, Baird, other players they've been talking to, others you think they'll get in. It's maybe a step back for them is a step sideways. And like you said, they're still in the 62 plus point territory and find themselves in contention for the Shield with 10 days left in the regular,
Yeah. What's funny is
people forget Corey Baird also could in fact spell Lucho Acosta at certain points during the year as well. He's got that ability to play in an attacking midfield role.
I thought that could end up being I'm sorry to cut you off, Chief, but that could end up being the crucial move of this offseason for FC Cincinnati, I think. Maybe not the biggest splash, but whoa,
just giving him minutes off because he was Lucho was out of gas. There were a lot of players on this team that were just spent by the time that the MLS Cup came around, and getting a few more players that are kind of like Yuya Kubo, where they can do a couple of different things for you and spell a couple of different positions for you. I don't wonder if that's part of the calculus as well with this idea of how do you have your team playing its best soccer at the end of the year? It's finding spots during the course of the year where you can give people some time off.
People are ready to write off Marco Angulo, and one of the unfortunate lasting images for me of the 2023 season will be him standing at the back post, kind of hands on hips, looking around at kind of almost like he wanted to blame someone else for the Columbus game winner in the Eastern Conference Final, when really, like, he was probably the guy to blame on that play, especially considering he was one of like 8 players with good legs standing on the field.
Right.
But, he's a young kid, and I think people have written him off. And I don't think, the speed of the game was the thing that he needed to adjust to. I don't know what it was that he wasn't able to grasp in year one here, but he'll have had 6 weeks to sit and think about it, hopefully, and think hard about it. And I'm not going to write him off yet. Year 2 could be a new day for him. And, people just assume you're not going to get anything out of that spot on the roster, but I'm not ready to say that. He could come in and this year be the player they were hoping for last year. And, then that's almost as good as an incoming transfer, So,
Yeah.
or Brett Halsey could step up and be a starter. FC Cincinnati has good dudes in this locker room. You could get some surprises, just like we did last year. No one thought Dom Badji was going to score 5 goals, or that, Junior Moreno, Dom, and Sergio Santos in the aggregate would essentially make up for Brenner's scoring output. Things can happen. They have now, some of the names I just mentioned are out of the picture right now, but that just creates an opportunity for the person behind them.
That's actually exactly where I wanted to go, Pat, is there are those names that are out of contract. Last we heard, they were in negotiations.
Right.
Should we at this point assume those folks that were in negotiations are not coming back? Or are there any names out there that you would expect to see back? I think primarily the 2 that I would want to see back would be Arias and Moreno, but
yeah. Agreed.
Gaddis is still, I guess, theoretically out there. He feels like a good player-coach signing if they have one of those available. But, yeah, just curious where you think they stand on their free agents. Or
the 2 that I think you bring a forward in, I think you can probably, assume Dom Badji is out for now. Look, I can't cite the numbers. I can't recall exactly what they were, but FC Cincinnati was convincingly more effective in the attack when Arias was on the field, and he played a good right back. So
yeah,
I think it would be good to see. And I think probably part of the reason it's been hard to bring him back is because he proved himself. He had a couple stretches where he got injured, which is what FC Cincinnati was kind of hung up on before they initially signed him last preseason. If you guys remember how that went down, he basically trialed in Clearwater for a month, and they were like, "All right, he's been healthy this long, we think." And so he was, but he proved himself, and he's still, he was playing in World Cup qualifiers during the season last year. So for Colombia, that is, and so he proved himself, and I think the market for Arias is probably really healthy, and he's probably due some more money than he was paid last year. But I think it would be totally appropriate to bring him back if that's still possible. And I know we've all probably seen rumors that, those talks broke down or aren't happening. I would take all that with a grain of salt. It's hard for me to imagine talks of any kind breaking down when Chris Albright is involved. He's just, I don't think things break
persistent.
down. And he's you guys have met him, right?
Yeah.
He's someone you could pull up a bar stool next to at the bar, belly up to a bar and have a beer with. And he's just a regular guy. It's hard for me to imagine a good faith contract negotiation where the player pushes back from the table in a huff. I just don't think that's
right.
happening. And Moreno, we've heard about possible midfield targets for FC Cincinnati this offseason. But Moreno, he's at a good age. He's another one playing in, the highest caliber matches possible in South America and World Cup qualifying. I think he can still do the job, just because it might not be a sexy name doesn't mean people should. I think that would be a great, I don't want to say addition because he was in the team the last couple of years, but that would be a great one to bring back. I'm totally with you, Kevin, on those two names. In terms of and then like guys like Gaddis, who would probably be just as content to, ease himself back into a retirement type period as he would be to come back in the team. And I do think he's someone who can balance those two possibilities proportionately at this stage in the preseason. That does not bother me at all. I think he's got the right mindset to handle those two possibilities simultaneously. I think that's one where you just wait and see. And I would think that FC Cincinnati gets the last call if he were to sign someone else or somewhere else, I should say. And, I'm sure he's going to pick up the phone for him, for Chris, if and when there's a call placed. So I think that's one. And maybe there's a couple other guys in that conversation where they just hang out, let us see where we're at once we spend a week down in Florida. And, there's every chance that we'll give you a call.
Tell me what you think about this.
Okay.
I think Junior Moreno is an incredibly undervalued asset in MLS. He is a floor raiser in terms of your roster, that you know what you're going to get out of him. He will not be spectacular, but he will be sort of a load-bearing piece of the structure you're building on a team. You can just plug him in there. He's going to do his thing. He's the kind of guy this team was missing as an expansion team. A guy like a Junior Moreno on an expansion team makes all the sense in the world to me. So tell me what you think about this. I think he should sign a contract with San Diego now, and then be loaned back to Cincinnati until San Diego starts. And then when they begin play, they will have Junior Moreno, who is, as I've said, the perfect person to start building your expansion.
He's a captain for San Diego on day one, especially in that market. I think that would be great. And I'm sure San Diego is, if they haven't been green-lighted, the opportunity to start building their roster out now, I'm sure that would happen soon. That'd be great. That'd be really cool. And
then he gets to go off to San Diego. We can hate San Diego and start a rivalry because they took Junior Moreno from us.
Yeah. No, I think that would work for Junior in a lot of ways too, because geographically he's going to be, a few hours via flight closer to Venezuela, where he is still playing at an elite level. Well, he's not starting, is he, for Venezuela, but still a contributing member of the Venezuelan national team. So, the guy is still playing. For anyone that wants to poo-poo the idea of basically a career MLS guy, this is a career effective, like you said, load-bearing MLS guy who has played for good teams and did the job for Cincinnati, did a few jobs for FC Cincinnati last year. I don't think he's the prototypical, I feel like, effective box-to-box midfielder in MLS. And I think it's players like that and Arias that maybe weren't household names in MLS. I think those are the ones. And bringing in someone like Corey Baird, those are the undervalued, underrated pieces that fly under the radar. When you bring one in like Baird, huge get. And if two of them walk away, like Arias and Moreno, if they weren't back, I think we'll learn. I think we'll learn early in the season how valuable players like that are when you see what the team looks like when they're not there.
Yeah. It's going to be fun watching the rest of this roster build come to fruition, because so much of the moves so far have been within MLS, like Robinson and Baird are good moves. Kip Keller, good in the league type moves. Is there anything in particular you're watching for the rest of this offseason? Something that might tip you off or anything?
Maybe ask it this way. It will be a successful offseason for FC Cincinnati if.
I like that.
Really good.
That's the kind of question we need a sponsorship for. That's like,
Yeah, yeah. I think
DM's
successful
open.
offseason, in my mind, I think Moreno's more important than Arias. If you can bring Moreno back in and have, whether it's Alvaro or Alvaro's replacement, a bona fide, like, write his name in Sharpie on the team sheet for now through next December, a bona fide starting caliber left back. You have one of those, whether it's Barrial or insert new player here, and Junior Moreno. I think that constitutes a successful offseason and puts them in a good, strong position to, again, not blow the doors off the league like they did early last year, but just hang around in the areas of the standings they need to be in next year. I think those would be things that would make me feel, would maybe even give me cause to walk back the idea that they will take multiple steps back in the standings this coming year.
Yeah. And then address striker in the summer.
Or April,
late in the season. Yeah.
Late in this massive primary window,
which is great. It's like open from virtually January 1st to, I think, like April 20th or something.
I think it's unbelievable. So there's work to do. I don't envy Chris for that either. Like, some teams got, like, the playoffs were just so herky-jerky this past year. Like, if you didn't make the playoffs or if you lost in your best of 3 series, like, you had an extended off season.
3 months, 4 months.
Yeah. I mean, my God.
Like 60 days at FC Cincinnati, less than that.
I think I heard that FC Cincinnati's offices were, now this doesn't apply to, like, Chris and Hunter Freeman, who are out recruiting and trying to get these guys in the door and whatnot. But, the club's offices were closed for like less than 2 weeks.
Wow.
In December. So just what I am really concerned about this year is the mental and physical tax of last season bleeding into this year. I think we had a Zoom session with the national team guys down in Orlando. That was on Friday. And I asked Roman Celentano how he was feeling, if he was, like, mentally refreshed, physically refreshed. And he said, not as much as I thought I would be.
Oh, no.
Well, I mean, think about that. I really hope that he doesn't get, like, punished or talked to by someone in the club for being real about what the situation is. I mean, anyone would expect that to be the case. Anyone reasonable would expect that to be the case. But I just remember there was a time after the St. Louis Open Cup loss in 2019, an FC Cincinnati player who I won't name gave me a really good telling quote about the state of the team at that point.
Ooh.
And he didn't get, like, reprimanded, like, fined or anything, but he got scolded for what he said to me. And then he came back to me agitated for accurately quoting him. So I hope people don't go after Roman and scold him for being real about what the situation is. But that is a younger guy on this team, someone who I think, just based on the nature of his position, doesn't do as much running around, works his ass off, but doesn't do as much running around on the field, obviously. He's a goalkeeper. And, he basically expressed on the Zoom, and other people were there to hear it, he expressed that he ultimately got back to a place where he felt like he was ready. He had the itch. He was ready to come back and do training again. But, the kind of that certainty of knowing you still need the time off brushed up really close with when he had to report to the national team. So, and again, he's a younger guy who probably doesn't have as much tread on the tires as other guys do. So I'm really interested to see. That's the big thing that I'm looking for, like big picture. How does last year, and even the disappointment aspect of the way they lost to Columbus in the Eastern Conference Final, how, if at all, does that bleed into this season? Because let's be real, FC Cincinnati was playing that crew match, 7 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I mean, this has not been a real offseason.
It feels like it was just like 20 minutes ago.
I know. And that's what I'm saying. And we weren't even playing in the game. So how do the players...
it hurt like I was playing in the game up there in the stands.
I know.
It felt real to me, damn it.
I know it did. I know. But,
I know.
But I mean, that is such a fascinating component to all this for me. I think Chris could put, he could make some Hall of Fame moves between now and the start of the regular season, even bring some new blood in if he's able to finagle that, whatever. This is all hypothetical. I would still be concerned for this team and the returning players about the toll that 2023 took on them.
It's an interesting bookend from the start.
That for me is so much more of a factor, and maybe is part of what leads me to believe the real push for another trophy comes in 2025.
Well, it's an interesting bookend to the total conversation, though, because it's like we start by talking about Aaron Boupendza and what he's going through. And this whole season, this whole off season, to a large extent, is kind of a gut check and a head check on where this team is. And you want to talk about Albright having a tough job. It's tough for Pat Noonan and his staff. And it's where I wish that his coaching staff would have gotten opportunities elsewhere, because I think they deserve it for the job they did. I'm shocked that Dom Kinnear didn't get a head coaching job this year.
I think he went really deep into that process, and I was surprised that he didn't get the job in the end.
And I'm shocked Kenny Arena, and I worry he's suffering for what his father went through a little bit, and the headlines that would happen if he was hired, which is bullshit. And God, I can't wait for all the details of that to come out. But I'm thankful that they're here in this regard, and that's that this staff has a lot of work to do. I think, to your point, getting all these guys mentally flipped onto the next page. And so that when they go down to training in Clearwater, when they're at media day today, that it's on to 2024. Because for a lot of these guys, you could easily forgive them for still living someplace else, either in 2023 or living back over with what's going on in Gabon. And it's a good reminder it's a human game played by humans, and that there's a real person on the other end of whatever it is you're shouting from the stands. And I've been as guilty of that as the next party. And there's a lot of guys who are going to have to earn their money to get this team ready to play. And if they can do that, I think the opportunities are all there for them this year. I still do think that.
I agree.
Yeah. It'll be fun to watch. I'll tell you that much. Like this is a super interesting season coming up for FC Cincinnati.
I wonder if it may not be, interesting as defined by wins like last year was. I think that could conceivably be less the case. I mean, look, they only lost how many times last year, but
only once at home. Well,
twice. That's hard to replicate. And that's another, and again, kind of going back to my point, Lucho Acosta, another harsh reality of this year, I think, is, and it is a harsh reality, the impact of playing in the Champions Cup. Mm-hmm. And Lucho, he was down at MLS Media Day in Miami on Thursday, I want to say. Yeah. He spoke, and he was saying that, all the different competitions we're going to be in, it's going to be hard to replicate what we did last year. And part of that is just kind of a humble admission from the humble warrior. Like, he can't realistically or credibly come out and say, yeah, we're going to win the Shield again. Hell yeah. He would sound crazy. But I think what I heard in his voice was like, hey, like, this Champions Cup, the travel, like Jamaica's not too far, but it speeds up everything, and it throws the timing off. And it's the timing that this team got in the sync of and used to catapult itself into 2 great seasons the last 2 years. Now you're interrupting the cadence of everything. The cadence of all of this has been thrown out the window because the end of the playoffs last year, because of when they're starting preseason this year versus last year. This time last year, they'd already been at it for 8 days, if you can believe it, even though the season is starting earlier this year. But I think as an acknowledgement of like the wear and tear on this team, and I think the report date for preseason could begin on the 13th league-wide. But Cincinnati isn't going to train until Tuesday. And I think it's just like we got to get these guys somehow into the second week of January with a break. It's just not long enough. So, and then there are so many examples of teams that spend resources, even if it's only for a couple rounds in Champions League, Champions Cup, and they suffer for it.
LAFC last year.
I mean, yeah. And four cup finals and no trophy. Unbelievable for LAFC. So, yeah, I mean, interesting is an understatement. I think there'll be some tough pills to swallow along the way results-wise, and it'll feel unfamiliar because last year was just so dominant. But, yeah, interesting is an understatement, and it's going to be fascinating, you know.
Can't wait to see it.
I'm not going to do that justice sitting here in East Walnut Hills trying to convey that via Zoom. But, man, is it going to be fun to watch.
No, it really is. We've seen the evolution of this team from when Albright took over, a historically bad team in MLS, getting it up to speed, turning it into a playoff team. Probably got a lot better, a lot faster than they thought in 2022. Yeah. 2023, I think, took everybody by surprise. That was definitely within the realm of possibilities, given where 22 ended. And now we're at the point where every player now is somebody that Albright has signed or re-signed. Yeah. We're at the point now where they have to maintain the success. And that's why these guys were brought in from Philadelphia, was that they could create a successful team, but then also maintain a successful team. It's going to be fascinating to see how they manage that. And yeah, as we said, with all the noise going on, I think this could be a even more difficult head coaching task for Pat Noonan than anything he's had so far, given the stakes. We know how good this team can be with all of these pieces. Now, can they sustain this? Can they continue to grow? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where else to go with this. I think we've touched on everything we needed to, but I don't know, Pat.
Give this week a few days and.
You're right.
You'll have another tennis hopper full of storylines to dissect by, probably by Wednesday morning.
Oh, peek behind the curtain. We have been recording these episodes on Thursday the week before. It's worked out nicely for everybody's schedule. This week, we said we want to push it back to about as late as we can up until release date, because so much was changing. So many new stories and little bits and pieces were coming out so quickly that we needed to give ourselves enough room to be timely by the time this releases.
Right, seriously.
The perils of the one day a week recording. Pat, you're a trooper as always. Thank you for joining us. I'm not going to wish your Philadelphia Eagles well. I can't do it, even though you're our guest. Okay.
I'm not anticipating. I don't know how they're favored. I mean, a week ago at this time, they were favored to win tomorrow. That's folly. They're in the midst of an epic collapse that could cost a head coach who has never missed a playoffs in his 3 years in charge of this team, could cost him his job by this time tomorrow. So,
which is insane to me. I can't believe
we are in the, and it's not about, dude. It's not about people. I feel like the national media was slow to catch on to this. It is not about hallucinatory, like expectation levels in Philadelphia or anything like that, but the scale of the collapse over the last 5 weeks has been truly staggering. The team is unrecognizable from itself. I mean, they went from Super Bowl probably a NFC favorite to get to the Super Bowl and having the MVP frontrunner in Jalen Hurts to, now playing on the road in the wild card round of the playoffs against the 9-8 NFC South team. And the game is a coin flip at best. Like, it is an epic collapse. Oof. And I don't think it's being talked about in those terms, but pain.
Yeah. Well,
pain. It's something to monitor with Noonan and Albright here, or at least Albright being a Philly guy. Does the Philly season impact his mindset going into these?
I know he was dismayed by the whole Sixers Kelly Oubre thing.
See,
that very strange situation where he was hit by a car in downtown Philadelphia, but somehow there were no cameras showing this happening in a major metropolitan downtown area. I know he was dismayed by that. I wouldn't be surprised if the story of this week is, how does Chris Albright rebound from a
oh my God, don't put this on me. Don't put this on me that my Buccaneers winning would somehow derail Chris Albright's thinking. I don't need this on my conscience.
The ultimate poison chalice. That's the only way I would have it for you.
So if the Eagles win, Barrial gets sold for $10 million.
For $20 million.
Yeah. And if they
don't,
this is
not fair. This is not
he's
fair.
Disgruntled and he's stuck
news.
on this team. Oh no, Pat, you've been amazing, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's always my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me.
Before we head on over to part 2, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Cincy Shirts. And I got to be honest with you, if you've never heard of Cincy Shirts, I don't believe you. Look, they are the best when it comes to FC Cincinnati gear. They are the best when it comes to Cincinnati sports gear as well. They have an amazing selection online and in their 2 stores, one in Hyde Park, the other in Fort Mitchell. They do amazing stuff. They can also print on demand, by the way. Go check out their stock. And when you do, if you use the code ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, they knock 10% off your order, and we kind of get to take credit for sending you over there, right? I think we can all agree that's fine. Just let them think that we are how you learned about them. They also have MLSPA licensed gear. Support the Players Union and FC Cincinnati players with that one. And as I said, they have print on demand in their location. So if they don't have your size in stock online, go to a store. They'll print it for you. Huge thanks to Cincy Shirts for being sponsors of the Postcast. Our longest running sponsor as well. Amazing, amazing guys. Happy to be working with them. Check them out again. Cincy Shirts, link in description. Use the code ThePostCincy. Get 10% off your entire order. Doesn't even have to be FCC gear, and you'd be doing a lot for the show. So thank you so much to Cincy Shirts, and thank you for using the code. All right, we are back again. Huge thanks to Pat Brennan for coming on the Cincy Postcast. I think he's the official 4th co-host now of the pod. He's been on so many times, and I still want to bring him back on to do a proper preview of the season. So
that'll definitely happen.
Expect more Pat Brennan. Yes.
Yeah, why not? Good content, good hang. We're so lucky to have him. And have people like Laurel and CST. I know we say it a lot, but there's a lot to write about this club. I think we covered that pretty extensively in our conversation with Pat, but in a lot of cities, there's no one writing it. And the media ecosystem around this team is incredibly healthy. That's good. And what it does is it pushes the club to be better about the content it offers, because it's not the only place to get your news. And I think that's reflected by the fact that they went and they hired someone like Carter, who's a really good writer, because they're in competition for page clicks with real good reporters like Laurel and Pat and the guys at CST and all that. And just, it's hard to, if you don't live in another city where you don't try to find content for other teams, it's actually kind of shocking how few people write about this league elsewhere.
Yeah.
Or is that shocking anymore? Or do we just accept that and know that at this point?
I mean, you would think in an era of like any click, like anybody to drive traffic, that more of your mainstream newspaper of record type outlets would be covering MLS just to go after that niche market, right? Like I'm thinking New York Red Bulls, for example. They've had absolutely nobody show up to their team pressers, or like only their club employees. But there are like large newspapers in northern New Jersey, at least two, that should be doing this. They should be covering this, that you will drive a certain segment of soccer fans there. Or Colorado. Are there no soccer fans in Colorado that would casually read about their MLS team? It's very, very weird. I don't know what's going on.
The entire media landscape around MLS is just, it's weird to me. I don't know, like, we've talked about this so often off the air. I don't know if we've talked about it on the air. I find it bizarre that it's so hard to find national coverage of MLS that is at a, I don't want to say surface level, but, more than just a surface level of what's going on around the league, what's going on in these games, what's going on, what are the big narratives going on around, the players, the teams, in, out, who's hurt, who's in form, just the stuff you take for granted on the NFL, NBA, NHL. There are dozens, sometimes, in excess of 100 probably, different ways you can consume content about the NFL. What is there in MLS? Like, what? It's extra time?
Right.
And then what?
Hope the Athletic covers everything, right? Like, it's so weird that, there isn't a place you can go. And what's funny is about the Athletic, you've got Paul Tenorio and Tom Bogert, who were former MLS employees. Right. So they're not a part of the extra time MLS.com setup, but, they kind of also are. Even Total Soccer Show has dedicated about an episode a week to MLS. And it's usually David Goss, one of the co-hosts of Extra Time, and Joe Lowry, who was also a longtime contributor to MLSsoccer.com, or at least I believe he was. So, it's so weird that there isn't a media that isn't not MLS.
It was funny. I thought about this the other day. Somebody in the Discord, in the our post Discord, asked the question, what's a good MLS podcast I can be listening to? And other than Extra Time, I was like, I don't know. And in all these other leagues, you have just different types of media to consume. You have some that are like, very, very straight up. You have ones that are dedicated to fantasy football. You've got ones that are news. There's ones that are game breakdowns. There are others that are just comedy. It's just, we're talking about the NFL, or like, Spittin' Chicklets with the NHL, where it's Paul Bissonnette, and chopping it up with people. There's nothing like that in the MLS sphere. It's just, I don't know. We're lucky we have good local media in this town, but Jesus, it's just, I find it really hard to see how this league continues to grow. And this may be a little more meta than I was anticipating when I started off by wanting to congratulate Pat and say that we should appreciate it more. But like, how does this league grow if your consumption of this league is so siloed into just your team? Like, how many people that are fans of FC Cincinnati, I'm talking people that are season ticket holders, that could name more than 3 people on any other team, on an MLS team?
Yeah.
Like, that's insane.
Right.
If you ask a Bengals fan can probably tell you at least 5 or 6 players on every team in the NFL. That's part of that's fantasy football, part of that's betting. But like, we know so little about these other teams we play. It's almost comical.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you name 3 non-DPs on any team? And hell, half the DPs in this league are anonymous as well. It is very strange. I don't know. I know from time to time we've thought about doing a MLS spin-off show or dedicating some amount of time to MLS, but I don't know, man. If
maybe there's like the other thing too, I think, is like, is there an audience for that? But then it's a chicken and an egg thing.
Yeah.
Where is there an audience for more MLS general content, like stuff beyond what FC Cincinnati is doing? Do people care, about, hey, we might not be playing Minnesota this year, but this is what's going on in Minnesota, or hey, there's this big storyline that's happening out on the West with Colorado, and signing players like Georgi Mihailovic and or Hugo Lloris signing out in California. What does that mean? Carlos Vela, what's he doing? Like, there are big storylines throughout the league, and is there an appetite for that? The answer may be no. And if the answer is no, isn't that a really bad sign for this league?
Right. Yeah. And I guess to some extent, MLS is doing their best to subsidize it by putting out their own content. But yeah, the fact that the SB Nation MLS blog archipelago, as it were, of various independent islands of content for all those teams was hacked to pieces, I think, at the beginning of last season, because they just sort of gave up on that business model. It's so strange. I don't know. Maybe somebody else has a good one. I haven't found one with decent audio quality and fun hosts. Like, I'd really like it, but
yes, send us a DM. Yeah. Like, if you've got a good idea for like how to do MLS content better, I would love to know it, because I feel like the league is crying out for this, and that like this league will not take the next step until people start to follow the league more than just their own local individual team. And it looks like this year we're getting away from the every team kicks off at the same time every day scheduling. I don't know. At least the first couple of games we're playing aren't in the traditional Saturday at 7 time slot. That's a start, but I don't know. Are you interested? Like, this is what I said, not you. This is you, the listener. Yes, I am talking to you in your car or wherever you're listening to this. Are you interested at all in more about this league? This is like Starship Troopers. Would you like to know more? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Maybe
we're all just happy. Maybe we're all just happy following the FC, and we learn enough about each team coming in to know one thing to sound smart when we're in the stands about.
Yeah. I would be interested to see if people have an appetite for that. Because, I would
care.
I would love, even if it's just like a couple of the big storylines at that moment. I think that would be good.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want like tactical breakdowns of other teams. I don't care that much. But like Minnesota fired Adrian Heath. Sorry, I always confuse
still doesn't
this
have a coach.
Still doesn't have a coach, and their interim coach left already. So like,
and they have a GM. Their GM isn't arriving until the summer, and there's a thought that they're not going to hire a coach, a full-time manager, until the GM arrives.
That's fine.
And like
That's
they're telling
normal.
their fan base, no, you don't understand. This GM is worth waiting for. You're going to love the fact that we're doing all this without a GM right now. That's insane.
Right. You're going to burn what is essentially an entire season for the hopes that this GM is good. And we've seen GMs have a shelf life of 5 years, 7 years at most. And you're already giving up 20% of that just to bring him in. What the hell?
I don't know. You wouldn't know it though, because where is this being covered? They don't talk about this. They don't talk about this league on ESPN. They don't talk about this league on like national sports, general sports podcasts.
Oh God, no. There's a really funny rumor out there. I don't think it's very well sourced, but the rumor is so funny you can't not think about it. Carlos Vela to LA Galaxy.
Yeah, he's going to drive across town to the other stadium.
So good. I love the idea of their star player, the guy that they literally built the franchise around, goes and joins the rival across town. Oh, that's delicious. That's so good.
Kind of glorious.
So yeah, I don't know. There's some funny stories out there if people are interested, but we're not covering them because we are doing in the 11, out of the 18 to finish this episode off. This is where we find something from the past week that we like. We put it in our starting 11, or something we don't like. We're kicking it out of the 18. Maybe it's got to go do some minutes in MLS Next Pro. So, Chief.
No, I always start. You start.
Okay,
this week.
you want me to start?
What's in your 11, Kevin?
Well, Typically, this is a non-soccer section of the show. However, I do have a soccer specific way I'm doing this, and I'm going to go in my 11. Oh my God, I've already lost it. I've already lost it. Here,
really?
I'm going to pivot. I'm going to go out of the 18. I'm putting the preseason schedule. I'm going here. This is my favorite rant. I get to do it every year.
Oh God, is this the filming the preseason and televising the preseason
you
rant?
Bet your ass it is.
All right.
Preseason comes. FC Cincinnati is going to be playing 4 matches. What are they doing? They're in Clearwater, Florida. I think they've been there every year but one, including the USL years. Definitely in MLS. They're playing at Al Lang Stadium, which could be fun. Austin. Then they're playing New England Revolution twice, and then of course, the Philadelphia Union. And per usual, these will not be broadcast. These will not be filmed. These will be hardly described in any written or audio form whatsoever. It's super frustrating. Every other sport on the planet Earth has a preseason where fans are not only allowed to watch, I'd even say encouraged to watch. Other soccer teams around the world certainly make a big production of their preseason, whether it be, high-profile friendlies around the world or at a big camp in the Middle East, usually, where they'll put some of this stuff up. They'll film some of these games, or they'll open the stadium up to playing a lower division side domestically for a preseason match scrimmage that people could come in and watch. We get nothing. We get absolutely nothing. And I've made peace with the fact that we don't get anything, even though I'm convinced, even if it's shitty quality, you could do it. I'm convinced they do this because they are generally breaking immigration and labor laws by hosting these games and playing players that have yet to legally be signed anywhere in these games, so that if they were broadcast or if a ticket was sold, it might be misconstrued as them performing, say, a job in a country that they may not legally be allowed to. And I just wish
unnamed trialists can't break the law. Santiago Arias very much could break the law.
Yeah, what was the other one? Was it Lacadia? Somebody was definitely not in the roster, definitely not on the team.
I think it was Jurgen Lacadia, actually, where he hadn't been. Yeah, like some paperwork hadn't come through yet or something like that.
Some tweets had to be deleted. It was a big deal. So I've made peace with that fact. I just think it's very weird. You have MLS season pass. You're desperate for content. Most people, if you bought a season, it expires at the end of January. Most of these games are in February. Feels like easy content, guys. Just put it up there. You don't need a commentary. Just put a decent camera up.
When we get preseason streams and you say just put a camera up there, it's amazing how bad soccer is when it's being filmed from a bad position where there isn't a broadcast position and the camera doesn't zoom. Where the fan, or the person holding the camera in the bleachers, and they pan over and you can't see a damn thing that's happening. You can't read the numbers on the players. You're just sort of guessing as to what the hell is going on. You've got to be a sicko to want to watch preseason soccer in that format.
Look, I'm not saying I'm not a sicko, but
and then you know what happens? You know what happens is you watch that, and then all of a sudden everybody runs off and we have hot takes because how bad the defense looked in this 720p stream that isn't zoomed, where you can't tell what anyone's doing or who's playing. All you can see is goals being scored and what was Roman thinking. And then you find out a week later it wasn't Roman playing because you couldn't tell that from the how grainy and awful the video was.
Well, 2 things to that. 1, I don't mind a tape delay. Look, it doesn't need to be a simulcast. You can film it across a couple of iPhones. They shoot in 4K. They output in RAW. All right, don't give me this. They don't give you high enough quality. Slice it together. Post it a day later, 3 days later. It doesn't matter. But let me see it because I know the preseason doesn't matter. But I want to think back on 2 incidents in particular, maybe 3. The first one is the Carolina Challenge Cup was broadcast. Our team was set up in one formation, and it looked so horrible that Alan Koch changed the formation going into the season. The preseason told us something. We learned something. We all could see it with our eyes, and that happened. The other was when the Louisville team admin scored against Ben Lunt. We were told it doesn't matter. Looking back on it, it's a pretty good indicator of where that season went.
Yeah, not great.
And I'll say unknown trialist number 3, a.k.a. Santiago Arias. I don't know. Would have been fun to see that guy trying out. So...
All right. Well, I guess I'll follow suit. I'll
Please.
go out of my 18 first. Out of my 18 first are Euro soccer schedule hardos. So last night we had a game, NFL game, terrible game, but worth watching if you enjoyed possibly seeing people die of frostbite and hypothermia on the field. A game being played in Kansas City between the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs, where the kickoff temperature at 7 o'clock local time was 5 degrees below zero, with a wind chill that dropped temperatures down to about 25 degrees to 30 degrees below zero. There was a game that was supposed to be played last night in Buffalo between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Buffalo Bills that had to be moved to Monday because of whiteout and blizzard conditions that would make it unsafe for a large number of people to all congregate and drive in one area. They were offering people $20 an hour to come down and shovel snow out of, I guess it used to be called Ralph Wilson Stadium. It's probably named after an underwear company at this point because everything has a name. But yes, this is the weather that European soccer hardo schedule people want the U.S. to be playing soccer during, and I think they are dumb as fuck. And if you're looking at this and saying, oh yeah, no, we can definitely emulate the calendar they use everywhere else, shut up. Yeah. Nobody wants to go watch soccer. Nobody wants to go watch any sport in 25 degree below zero wind chill. People will do it because they're psychopaths and because it's the NFL. They only play so many games a year, and this is the playoffs. For a regular season matchup between FC Cincinnati and Minnesota United, or FC Cincinnati and Sporting Kansas City, yeah, no one's going to go watch that in this weather. You are stupid and agenda-driven world soccer talk if you're continuing to push this bullshit narrative.
And MLS, unlike any other of the major professional leagues outside of maybe hockey might be in this position, but MLS relies on gate receipts to stay afloat financially. Like the NFL would obviously make less money, but the NFL would be generally fine if every ticket was free in their stadiums, right?
Yes.
But MLS can't do that. Like a huge percentage of their yearly budget comes from the ticket revenue. And so, yeah, you can't risk that. And then this is where I will say I'm in favor of something like it. But what you end up doing is you end up playing the exact same window of games that you're doing now, but you're just flipping the beginning and the ending and calling it a success, which feels really complicated for almost no reason and completely ignores the fact that I think most of South America runs a schedule similar to us, and all of Scandinavia runs a schedule similar to us, and Ireland, I believe, runs a similar schedule to us. So when they say the European schedule, it's morons that literally only watch the Premier League and have no understanding of how the rest of the world deals with, I don't know, their local weather, like in Norway or Finland or Sweden or, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Come on. It's ridiculous. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Although, you know, we get to see cute videos of Taylor Swift wearing Travis Kelce jackets that are handmade. And doesn't that make us all the real winners?
By the wife of a current 49ers player
yes.
made that. These are the things I don't necessarily want to know about, but I do know about.
Can I offer another special out of my 18? Just one more?
By all means.
Double out of the 18. Out of my 18 also, the Peacock app. I have a specific reason for hating the Peacock app.
Okay.
All right. So, there's a little inside baseball, but hear me out on this. The NFL has moved to YouTube TV for Sunday Ticket, yes?
Yep.
Thursday Night Football is on Amazon Prime. That's a streaming app. Yes?
Yep.
Okay. For both of those things, YouTube TV and Amazon Prime, if you are a business owner, like a bar, a sports bar, someplace like that, you don't use the streaming app to view these games. You use DirecTV still to view these games.
Right.
Peacock doesn't follow that same thing.
Oh.
You have to actually go and put the login on each individual TV you want showing the game to the Peacock app and start streaming. So last night, I was at a local watering hole watching this game with a couple of friends. There were 4 TVs showing the Kansas City Miami game, all at a different point in the game because you can't sync up streams because it buffers and streams at a different rate. So whenever you looked around the bar, everyone was cheering and watching at different times because you can't sync the goddamn streams up. It's not a problem if you're on DirecTV and every DirecTV is at the exact same point in the game. This was awful. Get your shit together, Peacock.
Wow. What's embarrassing is MLS even has a deal with DirecTV for bars.
Yes,
for the
they do.
Season pass.
Everyone else has figured this out except fucking NBC.
And if MLS is ahead of the curve on you, you've really fucked up.
Yeah, sure have.
Now, I will say, I thought you were going a different place. I have been, I don't know why I do this to myself, defending the Peacock move to people because back in 2014, the NFL started putting playoff games on ESPN, which I continue to point out to people is still a paywall and a much more expensive paywall than Peacock ever has been, probably ever will be. And people were mad that the NFL was behind an app. And I thought, I don't know, $110 a month for basic cable feels a little more onerous than a $6 one-time charge. If you were only going to pay for this one game and you needed to buy 1 month, it felt like a decent price to pay. But I don't know.
It's funny how you live insulated in your own little timeline on social media. And because my timeline is populated by so many people who are soccer fans, the outrage for Peacock just wasn't there because we already have it for the Premier League.
Right. Yeah. Like we've already dealt with this nonsense. Oh, especially back when they first launched Peacock, where you had like NBC Sports Network that they were still in the process of killing, and USA games and NBC, and it was very confusing where to find your games.
3 different paywalls or 2 different paywalls to watch soccer in the Premier League, but everyone lauded it as such a great deal for fans. Bullshit.
Gross.
Kevin, what's in your 11?
In my 11, and hopefully in Greg Berhalter's 11, Ian Murphy.
Hot damn.
We recorded before the roster dropped. The roster dropped. Ian Murphy is on there. I'll take a victory lap right here. I thought Ian Murphy could potentially see a call-up. I'll say I didn't expect it less than 24 hours after saying that, but the Camp Cupcake does make the most sense to bring Murphy in, but no, it's a huge moment for him, and especially considering Miazga has already been in and around the national team. Miles Robinson was also called in, and Celentano has been called in. That makes the core of the defense solidly U.S. men's national teamers, and you know, if careers go the right way and injuries go the right way, that could be your World Cup starting defense for the old US of A. So
yeah, that's a big deal for Ian Murphy. That's a cool thing, going from super draft pick to US MNT call up. You know, you sort of forced your way into the starting lineup with your play. He's improved every single year he's been here. To this point right now, I think most people are projecting he's going to be the match day 1 starter. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of Nick Hagelin just because he's going to be the first fill in, and they're going to try and get minutes off for a lot of guys. And there's a potential of losing Miles Robinson to various international duties during the summer. And maybe Matt Miazga, I don't know, maybe he and Greg Berhalter can hug it out at some point and figure out what's wrong with the two of them. But yeah, that's really cool. And I don't know that got as much play online as I would have liked, because that's neat. And I understand. It's another thing, we could have brought this up with Pat Brennan, of, you know, people shitting on this too. Like, why is Ian Murphy getting called up. This is an abomination that he would ever wear the national team jersey. First off, if that's you online, touch grass.
Right.
Just touch every blade of grass in your front yard. Stop hating on this for a dude who gets a chance to suit up for his country. That's cool. That's neat. That's something that lives in the Wikipedia profile forever. And that's just, it's cool for this club too, that this club has a back line that is entirely people that have USMNT caps. That's in a domestic league. That's the dream. Is that where you're required to start a certain number of domestics, that your domestics are all people who are good enough to play for your national team.
Exactly. And it's what MLS, like if you are a USMNT only type fan, this is what you want from MLS, to be developing young American talent, putting them in the shop window of the national team camp cupcake call-ups, and seeing where their career can go and testing them out and seeing what they have. Like, I don't see why you wouldn't want to cast as wide a net as possible to see what you find. It's a good positive thing. And I think too, you talk about good job for Murphy. Think about how I think most of us felt after that first Austin game, that first Pat Noonan era game, and Ian Murphy was so bad. He got subbed out real quick at halftime there, to now getting a national team call-up, coming off of a season where he was a part-time starter for the Supporters Shield winning team, a team that was challenging for the all-time points record, a team that was in the hunt, and if not favorites, for every piece of trophy that they were competing for. Like, yeah, that's a cool moment for that guy. So way into my 11 on this one.
Love that. Love that for the team. I hope that it gets acknowledged at some point. You know, I don't know. That's cool. You should get like a patch on your jersey if you are a current starter for your national team somewhere, or a current member of your national team roster.
That would be
more
cool.
Than jersey patches.
Or even like, you get to carry your national team's flag on it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a patch, or even like, what do they call it? It's the jock tag. It's the little piece of thing down at the bottom. Yeah. Let those players get a little nation flag of their nation of, if they have a cap. That would be cool.
National flair going on there. I like that a
lot. Chief, what are you putting in your 11 then?
In my 11 are parachutes. Apparently you need to start wearing one if you're going to be flying on a Boeing plane lately. Kevin, what's wrong with Boeing? And should I be worried about any upcoming trips I have flying out of CVG?
Well, apparently it's only their latest and greatest airplanes that are not very good at remaining airplanes.
Remaining in the air and functioning at all levels.
Oh my God. What was so funny about that story is there was like footage from people filming in the airplane as it was happening, and all the passengers were very quietly trying to figure out if the two empty seats next to the hole on the plane had people. Was there anybody there? Like, man.
What's going on with airlines just in general? So like they got this one, the door blew open, or the fake door, because it's not a real door, blows open on this one, which is terrifying to me because I'm a big exit row enthusiast for a lot of obvious reasons. If you've met me, don't love that. Don't love doors blowing open, because that's a terrifying like fear that I didn't know that I needed to have on an airplane. And then just, there was that woman yelling that people aren't real at the back of the plane.
Yeah.
And there was the explosive diarrhea flight that happened a couple years ago. I don't know. Do we need to start thinking more about trains?
Look, you're not gonna find me disagreeing with a more robust rail network in this country. Okay. But I do think a large part of this stems from the fact that we no longer get dressed up for airplanes. There was a point in time where flying on an airship was respected for the technological wonder that it truly is. And people would wear suits and classy dresses and smoke in lounges on airplanes. And I do truly mean smoke in lounges on airplanes. We need to bring that back. We need to bring the upscale airplane needs to come back. People need to be treating that like a luxury. because it's fucking insane that we as human beings have the ability to fly. Lot of stuff being taken for granted.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I then in that case, yeah, in my 11 is Boeing to making everybody appreciate how hard it is to fly airplanes around the globe.
Yeah, it's kind of magic, right? And, I don't know. It feels like we should have a little more respect for what we're doing here. It's also one of those things, too, where this was an Alaska Airlines flight. But also, part of the reason why I don't love Frontier and Allegiant is that if I'm paying $70 for a ticket, I'm wondering what we're skipping in order to keep the prices low. And I say this as a man that took a $15 Ryanair flight once from Dublin to London, where again it's like, can you charge me $30 and give the plane another once over before we take off?
They take all the power tools away from the maintenance team. They're all they're hand cranking things on that airplane.
Yeah.
It's never.
No, it's like we're doing a Fred Flintstone takeoff to save fuel with everyone's legs down. I don't know. It's air travel. It's the best.
A faster rail network would be awesome. I did try to do this. I was trying to figure out. One, props to Redbeard again for putting together the cost of every away day on the website. Go check that out. But going to Chicago early this season by rail alone, it would involve taking, I think, 3 days off of work and catching multiple trains at, say, after midnight, but before 6 a.m. So
that feels like the kind of thing where it's like if you win the lottery, is becoming an exclusively I only travel by train person because you can afford to do that. Away
Days video exclusively by train would be so great.
That'd be a great fantasy football punishment too, is that you have to get from somewhere to somewhere only on a train.
You've got to go to New York City and take a photo at this tourist location, but you can only travel by train both in the city and to the city.
Yeah. Or it's you need to be in LA, but you have to take a train to get there.
Oh man. I mean, there are like some really fancy dinner trains. Like if you have like a week or two of vacation to burn, like, yeah, you can go book a nice trip on a sleeper train and they've got decent food on there. You go travel the Rocky Mountains or something. That sounds nice, but they're moving at like 8 miles an hour or whatever they're allowed to move a train in this country.
You get sidetracked when some Norfolk Southern train explodes carrying rat poison or whatever the hell's being hauled.
That's a good point. Yeah, all of the industrial rail gets priority or whatever.
Signal priority. Yeah,
cool.
So it's just neat. That's just it's a glorious way to travel. Although it's still better than being sucked out of an aircraft when the door blows. So
it does. It does remind me of the there was an old. There's an old, like, who goes first question. This originally started with trains, but then it became automobiles. It was like an ambulance, a police cruiser, a fire truck, and a post truck all show up at the same four-way stop. Who has priority? And the answer is always the postman because he's federal. And the post trains would always get priority over everybody else's trains because these were federal government trains. I don't know why I just said that out loud, but there you go. That's the postcast.
I felt like I learned something right there.
There we go. We got something.
Yeah. And I hope you learned something too. And if you didn't, go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast, which is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com for all of our written content, as well as links to our social media. You can follow us on Twitter, and as well, you can join us on our Discord server. You can find links to that server both in this episode description as well as on our website. That is where most of our conversations are going on. We have a lovely community there talking about FC Cincinnati, MLS, anything and everything else and everything in between. We also want to give a huge thanks to Jim Trace and the Makers for providing all of the music you've heard throughout this episode. They're an amazing local Cincinnati band. Again, more information about them is in the description of this episode. And if you enjoyed what you listened to, and you've made it to the end, so I'm going to assume you liked it, or you just can't reach your stop button, please like us, review us, subscribe to us wherever you are getting your podcasts. That is going to be really, really helpful. But more importantly, share this with a friend. A personal recommendation helps spread a podcast so much further. So please share this if you know somebody in your life who's an FC Cincinnati fan, an MLS fan, somebody that you think would enjoy this. Pass it on over. Thank you so much again for listening. It blows me away that people continue to listen to us, and thank you so much again.